First question was the physical, moral and spiritual states of man. So, I mean, how did the Promised Messiah ﷺ explain this in light of Islam?
Jazakallah, Qaasid. Yes, you're quite right that there were 5 questions that this magnanimous lecture was based around. And the first one was in relation to the 3 states of man, which is the physical, the moral and the spiritual state of man. Hazrat Messie Promis has mentioned right from the outset of this, in addressing this particular question, he says that the 3 states of man, the Holy Quran has designated 3 corresponding sources from where these particular states emanate from. So if you look at the first state, which is the natural state of man, or the physical state of man, which is referred to as nafs ammara, which is the self that incites to evil. And the Holy Quran refers to this as inna nafsa la'ammaratun bisu, that the soul is surely prone to enjoying evil. And the Promised Messiah ﷺ says, and I quote, "This means that it is characteristic of the human self that it incites man to evil and is opposed to his attainment of perfection and to his moral state, and urges him towards undesirable and evil ways. Thus the propensity towards evil and intemperance is a human state which predominates over the mind of a person before he enters upon the moral state." And Hazrat Messie Promis further says that this is man's natural state, so long as he is not guided by reason and understanding, but follows his natural bent in eating, drinking, sleeping, walking, anger, and provocation like the animals. So here he's saying that if these natural behaviors are not governed by reasoning or by logic, they remain as our natural state. But the moment they're governed by logic and reasoning, then they enter the next stage of the state of man, which is the moral state.
Yeah, so just picking up from where Shehzad's left off, I mean, Hazur, of course, briefly describes each of the 3 stages. So I would like to quote something where Hazur talks about the moral state, which is a state above the physical or the basic state with the nafs ammara. And it's known as nafs lawama according to the Holy Quran. And Hazur quotes the verse, وَلَا أُخْصِمُ بِالنَّفْسِ اللَّوَّامَةِ, that is to say that, and I do call to witness the self-accusing soul, which is from Surah Al-Qiyamah. And Hazur says that is, I call to witness the reproving self. That is to say, I call to witness the self that reproves itself for every vice and intemperance. This reproving self is a second source of human state from which the moral state is generated. At this stage, man ceases to resemble the animals. Like from the first stage, this is the second stage where man enters.
So this is the moral state?
This, for moral state, this is the reproaching state, where every action that man does, so it does it with understanding and with logic. Hazur further states that as it reproves every vicious movement, it is called the reproving self. Though it reproves itself in respect of vices, yet it is not fully effective in practicing virtue, and occasionally it is dominated by natural emotions when it stumbles and falls. It is like a weak child who does not wish to stumble and fall, but does so out of weakness, and is then remorseful over his infirmity. In short, this is the moral state of human self when it seeks to comprehend within itself higher moral qualities, and is disgusted with disobedience, but cannot achieve complete success. So from physical, where you're basically in the state of like an animal who has no understanding of anything what it does, then it goes, a human, reaches above that stage and enters the stage where everything is governed by logic and reasoning.
Yeah, subsequently, then the ultimate, the stage, which is the third source, and that is the nafs mutmainna.
So we have nafs ammara,
so
which is
the self. You have the physical state, you then have the moral state, which Quddus has just mentioned, and then the third one, which is the ultimate stage, which is the spiritual state of man, which is known as nafs mutmainna. And as we were mentioning before, that each of these states has a corresponding source from where it emanates from. Now the Holy Quran referring to this particular source of this state, says that Ya ayyatuha nafsul mutmainna irji'i ila rabbiki radiyatan mardiyah fadkhuli fi ibadi wadkhuli jannati. That is, O soul at rest that has found comfort in God, return to thy Lord, thou well pleased with him, and he well pleased with thee. Now join my chosen servants and enter into my garden. And the Promised Messiah ﷺ, regarding this particular state, the spiritual state of man, states that this is the stage when the soul of a person being delivered from all weaknesses is filled with spiritual powers and establishes a relationship with God Almighty, without whose support it cannot exist. As water flowing down from a height on account of its volume and the absence of any obstruction rushes with great force, in the same way the soul at rest flows towards God. And he says that this is indicated by the divine direction to the soul that has found comfort in God to return to its Lord. It undergoes a great transformation in this very life and is bestowed a paradise while still in this world. As this verse indicates, in its direction to such a soul to return to its Lord, it is nourished by its Lord, and its love of God becomes its nurture, and it drinks at it this fountain of life, and it is thus delivered from death. So these are the three states of man. And as Messie Promis has also shown the sources from which they spring forth from as well, respectively.
So in short, I mean, we have nafs ammara, number 1, nafs lawama, number 2, and nafs mutma'inna, number 3, which can also be known as, like the Prophet mentioned immediately after this, the natural, moral, and spiritual states of man.